Moving
Yes.
on. Next is an article from Search Engine Journal. This is a great one. 7 common AI website mistakes that are easy to avoid. So what I found interesting about this, and I'm going to read what the mistakes are, but I found interesting is that people are actually using AI to build their entire websites. I mean, we know that's coming. We know a few colleagues of mine that I'm connected to on LinkedIn actually did that for their businesses. They completely used AI to build all aspects of their site. So part of me is like, okay, it's good, but so to read the mistakes in the article, positive and negatives. Well, number one is generic design trends. Yeah, so like and it's talking about prompting. Give me something modern. To me, that's a huge negative. Is if it's just like using AI to write content, quite frankly, without giving the big picture and really training the LLM to understand the full goals, right? So like to me, it's the same thing is applicable for web design, right? So like, do you want your site to look like every other site out there or every other site in your industry? So generic design, that's one. Unexpected user interaction feedback. I think that's another thing is honestly usability. Like, AI can't see what your users are doing or know truly your audience and how they're going to react. I mean, it right now it's not as intelligent to know that yet. Broken or confusing UX patterns. I agree with that. You know how many times I've had discussions with Chat or Gemini, and I've pushed back on something, and then it literally folds and says, "Oh yeah, you're right." So like that's another thing. Another point the article says is weak messaging and product explanation. Again, the content piece. Poor information hierarchy and structure. Lack of evidence-based judgment and over-reliance on AI. That's huge because, lack of experience-based judgment, right? Like, it's even if you with highly prompted, unless it's really learned it, your business, your industry, your audience, and even then some, it doesn't necessarily have it can't make the judgment calls like you might be able to. And then, so those are some of the points that this article talked about. So Catherine, what do you think? John, what do you guys think on AI mistakes for building a site using AI in this article?
I listened to this piece on a podcast. I think it might have been an NPR podcast, and I forget the podcast name. But the point was these podcast hosts discovered vibe coding on Claude and just went nuts. They were creating websites. One of them created an app, and everything functioned and it worked. And they handed everything to a developer and said, "What do you think?"
Mhm.
And the developer was like, it's okay. Like, because he could see inconsistencies in the code.
Right.
He found some vulnerabilities in the code. He said that it's generic design. Over time, people are going to start to be able to tell that it was created with AI.
Mhm.
Same as content, same as anything. So I think that brings up a good point. I think that this aligns with the points in the article, to be honest. You just have to be careful, just like with using AI for anything.
Right.
The tricky part is if I were to turn around and use AI to develop something, I'm not a developer, so I don't know what good looks like, especially
Right.
from a back end perspective. That's the tricky thing. And the same is true for other people who maybe don't have the writing experience that I have. Do they know what good looks like? They probably know good enough looks like, but when you're representing your brand and your business, good enough's not going to cut it.
And what does it look like under the hood? See, to
Yeah.
me, that would make me honestly that might keep me up at night, knowing that my website was built by AI. Because I've built pages, of code on our website, on some of our other brands that we own websites using Claude, using Chat and Gemini, and it does a great job because I know how to read code. I can read code, so I look at it and I say, okay, this is following a natural regression. I understand what they're doing here, and it saves me a lot of time. But like you said, if you don't know what you're looking at, and you say, oh, this is great, it could be really messed up underneath. And to me, in my mind, also could be, what if, now we want to talk about web security. What if 5 years from now, you have hackers that go after all these sites that were built using using these tools, using the AI platforms. Now that's a security issue if you think about it. So John, what do you think on this? And then we'll move on. John,
Yeah,
what
I
do you
was
think?
basically going to bring up like exactly all of those points, like one to one, where it's like there are issues with security. They all, look similar. They all, it's all very clear. I think maybe it could be, a fun thing to play with if you have an idea for an app, and maybe as a proof of concept to send to somebody who knows what they're
Yes.
doing, right?
Right.
But
Right. Exactly.
if you're publishing a website that was completely made by, say, Claude, I think that in the future there's going to be something about them that is vulnerable, and then all of them
Yep.
will have that same issue because it's all it's all coming from the same source. So
Right.
I think you should really, really hire someone who really knows how to code if you're making a website for your business, or if you're making an app. It's just that's like an essential.
I agree. 100%.